morning, folks. How's it going? Good? All right, great. So I'm going to be talking about to break down JavaScript concept, but I'm going to be talking about more than just that. I'll be talking about how and why I got to this point. But yeah, let's look at the agenda very quickly before I introduce myself so that you all know where we're headed. We'll talk about algorithmic art very quickly. Then we'll go on to looking at how do you use art to learn. I'll show you a couple of very simple visualizations that I actually used and I'm using right now to learn JavaScript. And then we'll look at some inspirations and why bother stopping at code when you can learn so much more with this way. Awesome, folks. So I'm Ritvi. I'm a maker. That's how I like to call myself. I'm a coach at Major League Hacking, which is a hackathon foundation. And I love talking about it. So if you all want to know more, definitely hit me up later. And this is my favorite thing to talk about. I have random obsessions that first become a hobby and then later end up becoming professional gigs. Art being one of them. My current other obsession is scuba diving. So I know Martin also loves talking about it, so definitely talk to us about more of that. I do have a day job. I work at Diet as a developer advocate. So my background's in firmware engineering, so I studied electronics. I did multiple internships as a firmware engineer. And I think one of my favorite internships that I love talking about was at a design studio, and we actually sat down and designed and made efficient a hookah, a shisha. So that meant, yes, testing was fun, and which meant we actually sat down and made the burner and the flavor burning very efficient. Our client was obviously very happy with us most of the times. But now I switched jobs recently, and I'm now working with a video SDK company, which means my tech stack is completely changed from C, CPP, embedded C to JavaScript and React, and I'm also learning Android somehow. But yeah, so this is basically, I'm going to basically be talking about how I'm learning JavaScript. Awesome. We're live, so this is something I've been doing a lot with my online audience, and it's worked great. Let's see how it goes here, right? So in case it doesn't go well, we have a backup, so we're good. This is something I do. I call it an intuition exercise. Usually, it's a more solid concept. So what I want you all to do is scream, OK? The first thing that comes to your head when you think about the word learn, the first picture that pops into your head, or whatever's the first thing that comes to your head, just scream. Awesome. Books. That's it? Yeah. Awesome. My favorite. Yes, great. That's what I'm asking. Like, just the first thing that comes to your head. Fish. Awesome. My favorite example, I think, till date has been money. Awesome. Well, OK. So the speakers are great at speaking. I know that. But if any one of you all wants to scream, I know it's right before lunch. I promise you it's a short session. I won't take up a lot of time. All right, folks, this was the backup option in case you all did not scream. But we still have another activity for you all to catch up. All right, next activity. What's the first thing that comes to your head when you think of the word art? Like the first picture that pops into your head. Awesome. Picasso. Yes, Ben. What about you, Ben? OK. Anyone else? No one else? You're not into art? So I did this activity at a meetup in Berlin, and no one replied. And I was so shocked, because Berlin is the city of art. But anyway. Folks, anyone else? Anything that comes to your head when you think of the word art? Sculpting. Yes, awesome. The speakers are replying. Great. All right, well, it was a good experiment. I know how to go about it next time. Awesome. So yeah, the reason I do that is I promise I'll circle back to why I did that later. But yeah, just remember the things that came to your mind. Awesome. Let's dive right into the concept. So this is a very simple demo, right? Like I said, I'm currently switching tech stacks, and I love playing with art, and I'm a very visual person. So the way I'm learning concepts from like simple things like practicing loops, practicing conditionals, closures is a, well, sensitive topic for me right now, but promises, asyncs, I'll walk you through, I'll show you some examples that I've actually coded to learn myself. And of course, these are simple examples. I kept it simple so that you all can follow along later if you want to. And of course, it's a program that you all can fancy up very quickly later if you all want to. All right, let's look at conditionals and loops. I mean, I know for a fact that you all are all here pretty experienced developers for the most of it. But yeah, if this benefits anyone, yeah, it's going to be awesome. Apart from that, have fun, right? Great. So this is p5.js. How many of you all have here used p5.js? Okay, number. All right. So I love p5.js. I think it is a wonderful program. I love playing around with it. I'll show you my favorite website in a bit. It's my favorite website, one, because it's super creative, and second, because I never remember why I went to that website on, and you'll see why. Yeah, so let's continue. OK, so p5.js is basically a visual programming tool. It's open source, and it's a pretty great project under processing. Basically, if I give my favorite example to give again in the hardware community is Arduino, but basically they've abstracted a lot of things for you all to do things quickly, like draw and make visual interfaces, right? So I'll just quickly walk you through the simple setup. So usually you have a main function that you write which keeps running, right, which you keep coming back to. Over here, we have something called the function draw, which keeps running. And if you don't want it to run continuously, you basically call a function called no loop. All right, so basically, we have all the declarations. Then we have the setup, which is the code that runs once, and you're setting up, whether it's your canvas. In this case, of course, it's going to be our canvas. We'll set up the canvas to be of a certain pixel height and width. And then over here, we're calling no loop, which means we're going to run this entire program just once and stop. All right? And then we have the normal program, right? That's coming under the draw function, which is going to run once, because, again, we're calling no loop. So this is to basically visualize conditionals. So we have a grid that we are defining. Again, this is for fun, remember. So we have a grid size. We have a nested loop, because we're being very fancy. And we're checking whether or not our number in the loop is the variable is even or not. And based on that, we're coloring the squares. That's how simple the program is. Then we have a rectangle. And what we're doing is now we're creating the grid, and then we're coloring the grid based on the if and else, which is a nested if and else, a conditional inside a loop. All right? Great. And now when we have another function, which is mouse clicked, which is, again, an abstracted function in p5.js, that basically helps you have an abstracted callback to every time a mouse click is detected. All right? No. Cool. Let's see how it looks like. There we go. Simple program. We practiced conditionals and loops. But again, it's mostly to have fun. I have to stop doing that. All right, so this is another one. This is a slightly more animated one to help. Like, again, this is to have fun, right? You're practicing, you're learning something new. So if you're having fun, this one's a little more animated. This time, what we're doing is we're moving a circle towards the left, and at the same time, using the same loop and the same variable, we're basically also creating circles in a diagonal pattern. Why diagonal? Because we're also checking the screen width, and we're moving the variables according to this loop that's incrementing, right? So let's see how that goes. There we go. Right, so as soon as I hit play, we have one circle moving because of the conditional. So the moving animated circle is only because of an if-else statement, and the rest of the loop, the purple diagonal squares, are because of an for loop, right? Again, we're just having fun, and this time we do not have a no loop, which means it will continue until I ask it to stop. All right, let's talk about my sensitive topic called closures. I'm still figuring this out, so do not ask me the details. But this is my first, visualization with closures. And so before closures, scope. So this was the first, when I first read about scope on, of course, the Mozilla documents, I was like, OK, it's a simple visualization, right? So let's create it. Let's create a box. Let's create my scopes, and then actually just draw them as I proceed out of the scope, right? So how do scopes work? You have your global scope, which is accessible to everyone. Then you have a function scope, and then you have a block scope, right? So that's exactly what I've done. I've basically created 3 scopes, which declared across the code, and then drawn it as I exited the scopes. So let's see how that looks like. There you go. Simple visualization. I'm accessing the variables as I'm getting out of that scope. Uh, Nothing too fancy. All right. Closure. So this, I actually worked on this visualization quite a bit, and after multiple iterations is where this is at. So this was a lot of hard work, and you all will see that it's still a work in progress. So I've done, again, the same thing. I'm basically using the actual concept and using that to draw it, and taking the aid of tools from p5.js to basically draw the concept out, right? So I have my normal example from the Mozilla documents, the inner function and the outer function, and then I'm using that to create circles, and using the closure function to create and draw a line across the scope. So let's see how that looks like. And as soon as you click, this is where it happens. So I have these examples live as well. So once we're done with the demo, we will also look at the live examples as in the actual code. And we can even play around with it live if we have the time, right? So this is a simple visualization of closure. So yeah, this is where I'm at right now, trying to make jokes about it until I learn it better. But yeah. Great, so let's move on to the next thing, promises and async await. So again, still a work in progress, right? But so what I did with promises was I used multiple steps to learn it, right? So why do you use promises? Why do you use promises? Because you don't want to do a callback recursion. So I started with the callback recursion. So it's a very simple example again, right? So I'm starting with a simple move circle callback, all right? And then I am, again, the rest of the things remain the same. So we have the draw function, we have the setup function, and we have the looping happening until and unless we call the no loop function. All right, great. So we move on, and we're calling the change color function as soon as the callback is called. The callback is triggered. All right, so let's see how that looks like. So what's happening here is every time I click the mouse, the callback gets triggered. So every time I'm clicking the mouse, the callback gets triggered, and as soon as it hits the parameter, that is the if condition of it being at the wall, it's changing its color, which is my final function in the callback itself, right? All right, so now let's step it up a little. Let's move on to the next thing. So I'll call my promise for the first time, right? So when I'm calling the promise for the first time, I am going to, so why use a promise? Because we don't want callback. But what's the difference between a callback recursion and a promise? The idea behind a promise is that the promise continues in the background when your normal program's still running, right? I have a live example with the console.log to show it better later. But basically, over here, what we're going to see is, in the next example, that when I press, I do not have to click the mouse again and again. Basically, it's going to keep going on its own until the ball reaches the wall, right? So let's see how that goes. All right. Should have done this earlier. All right. Okay, so this is so this is the promise. This is the first promise that is there. Now let's look at what's after promise. There's promise chaining, right? So give me 1 second, folks. Enter full screen. Awesome. Great. So next, we're going to look at promise chaining. Great. So again, the same things are all repeated. We have our circle being drawn. We have a setup function. We have our first promise, which is the move circle promise that we called in the last program. And then we have something called move circle backwards, which we're chaining with our new promise. All right, so let's see. All right, awesome. So let's look at that. Great. So now what's happening here is, so our promise, the first promise being called is on mouse pressed again. It's an abstracted function. We're setting an interval, which is going to lapse as soon as my ball reaches first the wall. Then as soon as it does, the color changes. And as soon as the color changes, we have our next promise being called, which is move back. So this time, what will happen is, because of the changed promises, it's going to create an animation that hits the wall and comes back. So let's look at that. Fast. Let's go back a little. So again, I pressed the click once, and now it animated. First, it hit the wall, it changed its color, and now the next promise, which is chained, is calling the ball, moving the ball back to where it started. Awesome. So that is promise chaining. So now after this, let's also look at a little bit of a bar graph to visualize it slightly better. Go here. I think the video is stuck. Yep, there we go. And we're stuck. No worries, I'll show that to you all real time. All right, so let's look at some live code that we just looked at. I'll show you all the sketch I was just about to show you all. So that is. Perfect. So let's look at this first. So this is basically my favorite visualization that I made of basically you can see the bar graph being completed as and when the process is being completed. All right. And then what happens after chained promises? What's the point of promises if, like Jay just mentioned, the asynchronous programming, right? So next what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can use the await and async function, right? So let's look at that. Right? So over here, what we've done is basically the same thing as earlier. Oh, not this one. Yep, this is the one, right? So what we've done here is the same thing as we did earlier, but this time what we're doing is we're awaiting a first promise to get over, and this time it's not changed. Once it gets complete and we get the confirmation, we create another circle on top of it. All right, so let's look at that. Again, mouse click. So this time, our first promise is running the circle across the canvas. And once it reaches there, it's going to trigger another circle, another function to complete the circle. And then the visualization is complete. So this is basically one way to learn it. One of my favorite visualizations that I love doing with it is algorithms. I love visualizing algorithms. So some of my favorite algorithms to visualize are sorting algorithms. So let me show you all the sorting algorithms. So let's look at first the bubble sort. So this is a really cool visualization that I love playing around with. And I visualize most of my algorithms like this before I write them. So this is our selection sort. And you can see it's happening nice and slowly. And I love visualize it. So I love using this also to optimize my code sometimes, especially if I'm doing like simple competitive programming problems. So this is selection sort happening at its own pace. And to very visibly show that the insertion sort is faster, this is your insertion sort visualization. And you can see that the selection sort is probably still in progress. So yeah, this is fun stuff, and the bubble sort's complete, but sample size, to be fair, was smaller. So you can actually make your algorithms compete real time with this. All right, so a couple of more, some of my favorite examples in p5.js, and then I'll move on to the next thing. Uh, let's see, I wanted to show. So I love another thing is doing data and web visualizations here. So again, a very simple example is a slider. It's very easy to create. All right, on to the website I told you all I'll show. Let's see, where is it? Right here. So this is my favorite website, again, made in p5.js. And every time I go to this website, I forget why I'm here, because this is how awesome this website is. So I come to this website. I'm like, oh my god, this is such a cool website. I should create one like this. I play around for 10 minutes, and I'm like, I should probably get back to work. And I get back to work forgetting that this is why I came here. And so the reason I'm here is this is where I started learning JavaScript from. And if you all are, if you want to learn more about processing or p5.js, this is a really cool website to start off from. This is Daniel Schiffman's website, and I love quoting it every time. So I take a lot of live streams for MLH, and I'm usually teaching a lot of small concepts in depth. And this is where I usually come to, to get people started. I know for a fact that someone's done the exact same thing for Python also for p5.js. But yeah, I love playing around with this. And the visualizations that I've shown you are very simple. If you go to the examples here, there's simpler examples here. So for example, if I go to, I think my favorite one's the array one, which is kind of pointless in terms of actually visualizing the concept. But it's fun to show the chaos that goes behind the scenes. All right, let's get back to our presentation. There we go. So there's a lot you can do with p5.js, but I mostly, again, I started out with it because I was doing hardware and because I started out with Arduino and serial connections over, again, doing artsy things. But there's a lot you can do, and I'm still learning to use processing to learn JavaScript. But what's the point of this? Like, why did I bother showing you all this? It's because it's a very tried and tested thing, and I love playing around with it. And the point is skills are transferable, right? And growing up, I was always learning something new every summer in terms of art, and I ended up using that a lot, especially when it comes to embedded engineering, right? So this is my favorite example to show about. So what this is basically, I wanted to make the chandelier. I wanted to make that lamp, and I had a project due. So this is the project I ended up creating. If you see, I have a Pi right there, and it's connected to LED strips. The LED strips are in a series circuit with the Pi audio jack, and my speakers are connected to a solar panel. So it's basically a simple Li-Fi circuit. And the Pi is running a Volumio thing, and I ended up painting the bottles and everything. And it was a really cool project. I won the second prize. And basically, it was a Li-Fi lamp that my college still has installed today. This is another one of my favorite projects that ended up going on the Microsoft Reactor. This is actually me. Again, I wanted to do stained glass. I had another project due. So I was like, all right, I'll add stained glass to my project. And I ended up adding LEDs, and this was an Azure IoT project, which basically was a plant lighter with stained glass. So why stop just at code is how I started this presentation in the first place. So these are some of my inspirations, and I love talking about them. So this is Aisha. She does really cool PCB art. I have been following, and I've made some of her circuits again. She makes like earrings out of PCBs, rings out of PCBs, and whatnot. Then there's Mohit Bhoite. He does absolutely insane sculptures with wire and ICs. So this is basically a tiny IC that he's used and made an entire structure and a proper functional product out of, right? Another one of my absolute favorite folks who does this kind of crazy stuff is Jerry Pross. So what Jerry Pross does is he started off with some very successful instructables. I think this is one of his most famous instructable, which is an ornament, which even I actually recreated on a live stream and soldered live with it. But yeah, so he basically created a really cool uh, flower, right? He used an NPM motor and created a really cool wire flower. And that ended up being, that's now basically a startup of its own. So this was the flower that he created with just brass wires initially. And now it's a full-blown startup that he has based out of, I think, Czech Republic. But yeah, folks, this is the startup that I'm talking about. And yeah, that's pretty much it on my end. Again, the reason why I like learning like this is because I feel a lot of times when you're learning from just, like one community, you end up in an echo chamber and you don't really think out of the box. So I feel like when you're learning like this, when you're visualizing like this, you're learning with more than one community. And that way your perspectives are always open, your approaches are always a little more new, and your conditioning is always a little more towards learning new things rather than completing things. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. As promised, I'm letting you all go for lunch 5 minutes earlier. And yeah, you all can stay in touch with me using the QR code.